Glaetzer Wines, all about Amon-Ra today. We have a really exciting lineup of every vintage ever produced of Amon-Ra. Thank you for pouring this for me.
No,
this is really exciting to look at for so many reasons. First of all, Amon-Ra is a very exciting label created by yourself. Incredible wine, lots of aging potential we're going to talk about in just a second, but so beautifully shows off this range of vintages all the way from 2001 to 2011, which is the release that's going to be coming up. First to start, tell me a little bit about the development of Amon-Ra, the history of the label, and what you were trying to express when you first set out to make this wine.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of different answers to that, but my family history has always been involved in the wine industry, in vineyards in the Barossa Valley and Clare Valley, and my father has made wine in France and all over the place. So wine is very much part of my upbringing. And I guess with me sort of travelling a bit and making wine throughout Italy and France and other places in the Middle East, interesting sort of places to go and visit, you learn new techniques, but techniques that were new to me because I was quite young, 18, 19 years old. Not so much new in terms of world history of winemaking. And really when I came back and took the family company over back in 2000, my ambition was to release a wine that was Barossa Shiraz from vineyards that I thought really epitomised the flavour profile I wanted, but do it in a manner that was expressive of the fruit flavour of the vineyard and the textural side of the vineyard and the flavours that I tasted in the grapes without heavy-handed sort of winemaking style. So moving away from what was then a traditional perceived Australian winemaking and New World to an extent, moving back into using traditional techniques and honouring the flavour of the vineyard rather than dominating. And from that, I've always been a bit of a fan of Egyptian mythology, as you can probably see on the label.
Yeah,
Amon-Ra
very iconic.
It's the Amon-Ra is the king of all gods. I have a lot of comments at tastings around the world that apparently I look like the guy off the Mummy movie.
Well, it's funny when I was just thinking that. I was like, that was the inspiration, clearly.
I only actually saw that movie a couple of years
It's a
ago.
God complex, isn't it?
It must be something along those lines. But I hear it all the time and it's like, well, yeah, okay, fine. If it sells a bit of wine, then yeah, that's exactly what I did it for. But no, it's very much about just the Egyptian culture was really the first to embrace wine as a lifestyle beverage of choice. So, I mean, obviously water was a bit dubious. If you're drinking it straight out of the Nile, you probably wanted to boil it, or you drink beer, or you drink a bit of wine. And they really sort of embraced wine as a lifestyle beverage with food and just as part of family and friends. So that was always sort of in my head, and I decided that the wine that I was going to create that would really reflect my my interpretation of Barossa Valley, or sort of my Barossa Valley, was going to be called Amon-Ra, which is the king of all gods in Egyptian mythology. The symbol on the label, I mean, all the Glaetzer wines, you'll see that each one has a different symbol on it. But this one in particular is the Eye of Horus, which is the protective eye, or the all-seeing eye, which is, there are 6 angles, strangely enough, within the eye that represent the 6 human senses. And one of the major senses is thought, and thought is just as important with making wines of this calibre as smell and taste, etc.
Yeah.
So we're looking back now at 2001, 2002, that's now 10, 11 years ago, and the thought process leading into making that has led it to become here, to be sitting here on a bench. So it becomes a bit sort of deep, but it's sort of the concept behind Amon-Ra was the best of the best. My interpretation of what I reckon I could really show off as my interpretation of the Barossa. And that's the story behind it. It's always very small volume, and always, for me, the absolute best wine of every vintage.
Well, and why not? I mean, obviously it lives up to everything that you've described that the label represents. When you talk about small volumes, let's just sort of put a number on that. You said at a maximum you can produce 1,000 cases per year, which is tiny. And at the minimum, which is the 2011 vintage, you only produced a quarter of that, 250 cases.
250 cases, yeah.
So this is tiny production.
This
is the best of the best for you.
Absolutely. And there's always, I guess if you're driven to always try and improve what you can do and really harness that flavour of the vineyards, there's always the aspiration to make sure that you can release something. Because to not do that, admits sort of defeat in a difficult
Well,
year.
not only that, but I think that consumers, they really want to be able to taste every single vintage. They want to taste the place as it moves through every period of its evolution. And this is what you've got. You didn't sort of let the 2011 vintage, all the hardships and the setbacks of that very difficult rainy year get you down. You said, right, well, I'm going to take the best fruit I can. I'm going to develop and craft the best wine that I can out of it and express that year.
Yep.
And I think that this is a very good example of that. Looking at all of the wines, I've just tasted through them and got really good notes for all of these wines. The thing that really sort of stands out to me is how slowly these wines evolve. These are really built to age. They're wines to cellar. There are some vintages, probably up to about 2001 through 2007, you could consider drinking now. Anything younger than that, and I think it would be a little bit disappointing because they're still very young and primary. Obviously, this must be one of the things that you set out to do, to make wines that are going to live the long haul. And there's no screw caps that you can sort of fall back on and say, oh, my wines are evolving so slowly because now they're under this great, magical screw cap or anything like that. It's the traditional cork here, and all of them are very clean and fresh and vibrant, and some of them are still very, very young and tight, including the 2002 here. Do you want to talk just a little bit about that and your crafting of these wines?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really valid point. The whole idea about I guess these wines, but the wines I make in general across the range, really is, I'm really aiming for purity of fruit. Not so much, I was talking earlier, not so much about pure fruit flavour, like purity of fruit, so the wines actually smell fresh and they smell alive, they have personality. And I think that's really expressed in that 2011. Really vibrant violets and characteristics there. But the key behind the scenes really with the wine is it's got lovely fragrance and aromatics, but I'm really looking at balance of structure. And structure for me is tannin balance, but also fresh, lively acidity as well, which obviously comes about by harvesting at the right time to make sure the fruit is still fresh and still vibrant and still alive. It would be very easy to turn these wines into a wine you could stand a spoon up in, and we'd all look at it and say, well, that's interesting liquid. But the wine for me is very much
big,
about...
but is it better?
Yeah, exactly. So I want to go for wines that have generosity, because that is, for me, Ebenezer and Barossa Valley in general, is generosity. Yes, that's true
to where it comes from.
Yeah, it is. It's very true to where it comes from. So the flavours there are the flavours I taste in the vineyard, but they're sort of harvested at the time that I see the balance. And then I sort of nurture it all the way through. So you're absolutely spot on. That 08 is still... Even though 08 was quite a hot vintage, and quite a few people have looked at 08 wines and sort of said 08 was too hot, therefore the wines aren't all that good. But they are starting to show, those that are well made with good balance and good acidity are starting to show some real potential for development. And then, as you said, down here, moving through 02, 03, 04, I mean, there were such completely diverse vintage variations there that I try to highlight. But the real showpiece, I think, for me with Amon-Ra is that we can release a 2011, which has only just been in bottle for the last 2.5, 3 weeks, thereabouts. And it's quite approachable. It is juvenile, it's youthful, it's tight. You look at the 2010, which has been on the market now for 12 months. It's got depth, it's got complexity, but it's got the ability to age for quite some time. And it's great for me to be able to look at something like 2010 and then scoot down to a sort of 2002, which were very similar vintages, and see how that potentially is going to look. Because
really, do you think that, because 2002 was very cool, obviously, and I think 2010 was probably more of a steady growing season?
It was more of a steady, exactly. It's starting to warm up a bit. But sort of when I was making the two, it had that sort of same finesse about it early on as the 10s.
There's a perfume to it, but there's more, I think, generosity to it as well in the mouth there, and that's quite exciting as well. There are styles here, I think, to suit everyone's palate and passion.
Absolutely.
When it comes to Shiraz, because they really do follow the ebbs and flows of all of the vintages here in the Barossa.